What up, Facebook? What up, brothers? It's your boy, Mike, the mentor, coming at you for another version of Tuesday Thoughts. Oh boy, what's going on with the camera there? It's getting a little fuzzy. Switch over. That's weird. There we go. Alright. Totally broke my stride, my energy, and my rhythm, but bounced back. So if you're new to this page, basically the premise is to help men be better husbands, better fathers, better members of their community, on all aspects of your life, right? So I went through a lot of crazy stuff growing up, stuff that most people don't even go through in their entire life. And now that I'm older, looking back on that, and reflecting, I'm asking myself, why was I able to make something out of my life when I was born into, I guess, what would maybe be perceived by some people as unfavorable circumstances. And there's two things I've identified, or two main things I've identified. The first one is the grace of God. Without God, I wouldn't be here standing or breathing. And two is I had mentors in my life, mentors that I actively sought out in the books that I was reading, and mentors that came alongside me in my real life, men who saw something in me and refused to let me settle for anything less. And they encouraged me, and they loved on me, and they gave me hope, and they let me see how they interacted with their families and with their friends and with other people, and just great men that God put in my life throughout my entire life that sowed seeds in me. And I want to give that back, right? I want to take all that wisdom that's been downloaded and instilled into me over the years, and I want to share that with other men, because you don't know what you don't know. And it's not that I'm smarter than anybody. It's not that I'm wiser than anybody. We all have life experiences and circumstances that we've been through, and we need to share those things, right? So other people can learn, so we can help other people. And I've been pretty shy, pretty quiet about those things up till now. And what really was the tipping point for me was just all the suicides that are going on. Having dealt with suicide in my own life, I can't take it anymore, and I'm not going to sit back and not do something, and I'm not going to die and go to my grave knowing that I had all these things that I could share with to help other people and to make men's lives better, and I didn't speak up, and I didn't speak out, and I didn't do anything about it. So I'll get off that high horse. Welcome to the channel if you're new. So basically tonight is Tuesday Thoughts. So last week we started a little 3-week, foaming at the mouth there, mini series where we're talking about manhood ceremonies. Now, in Western society especially, there is no rite of passage, no formal rite of passage for men. If you ask a man, when did you become a man, you'll get a bunch of different reasons. The first time I slept with a woman, the first time I drank a beer, the first time I smoked a cigarette, the first time I got in a fight, when I turned 18, when I turned 21, right? There's a multitude of experiences that somehow our society says this is when you become a man. But in other cultures, it's planned out, it's thought out. There's significant recognition by members of the tribe, right, of the community, that welcome a person into manhood after they somewhat prove themselves. Whether that's the Jewish bar mitzvah, or like in Africa and in some tribes, you got to go out and you got to kill a lion and bring that thing back before you can be a man. So this whole idea came from a book that we talk about and that I teach out of on Fridays, called The Quest for Authentic Manhood by Robert Lewis. And he's also got a book where he'll talk about this subject in more, he'll go a lot more deeper, called A Modern Day Knight. If you want to get that book, I highly suggest it. A lot of great information in there, and stuff for you to think about for your own kids, and how to be more purposeful in helping them come up. And you don't even have to have kids. Maybe, you're in your late 20s or your early 30s and you mentor someone who's younger than you, right? And you want to help them with this. So last week we kind of talked about what a manhood ceremony was, kind of some of the things that go into a manhood ceremony. Like, right, it's got to be memorable. There's got to be clear teaching points and instructions. Um, and there's got to be some sort of ceremony, right, that involves other people, that can encourage, impart wisdom, and help, that person that you're bringing through, your son or a younger gentleman, as you welcome them into manhood. And there can be different phases of this. For example, like with my own son, right? Like, and I'm about to share this because that's what tonight is about. Word, Charles, is about. What is that? What does a ceremony look like? An age-appropriate ceremony, and there can be a 3-step process. So, right, like, so for me and for Robert Lewis, this looked like having something at the age of 13, something at the age of 18, and then something just before your son gets married and enters into that phase of his life. So what it looked like when my son was approaching 13, and the reason why 13, right, is because you're stepping into a new area of your life, those teenage years, right, where life starts to change pretty dramatically. Your body starts changing. Your feelings towards the opposite sex start changing. You're starting to enter into the early stages of manhood, becoming a young man. So I wanted to prepare my son for that. And I just, after reading this book and going through this workbook, it just rocked my world and plays such an importance as a father on wanting to do this for my son. And just I always think, like, what would I want as a son from my dad, because my dad really wasn't around. And those things that I wanted from him are things that I want to make sure that my son has as well. So up until 13, I was pretty strategic in the things that I was teaching and talking to about my son, or with my son. And so what I did is, for my son's own manhood ceremony, is I got together with one of my good buddies who has a son that's Anthony's age, and I came to him with this idea, and I said, hey, I want to get our boys, and I want to bring them up north to my grandpa's cabin for the weekend, and I want to have this manhood ceremony, and I want to invite some other people that are important in my life, and who have made a difference in my life, that can speak words of wisdom into my son and into your son, and just esteem their and affirm them in their young manhood. And we'll have a ceremony, and we'll play some paintball that Friday, and then Saturday, we'll cook steaks over the fire, and they can shoot BB guns in the woods and run around, and we'll play cards. But at night I want to have a very intentional ceremony, and then I want to commemorate that ceremony with them, so that they'll never forget it, right? It'll be a special marker in their life. And my buddy was all for it. So I got my grandpa, I got my brother-in-law, I got one of the guys that I was mentoring at that time, and my son's friend's dad, my buddy Monty. And I told them, this is what we're gonna do. This is what I want it to look like. Would you be willing to participate? And if you participate, I need you to think about some things that you would want to know if you could go back to 13, about what it looks like to be a man. And I want you to share those things with the boys. And everyone was like, oh man, that's an awesome idea. I'd so be honored to be a part of that. So that's what we did. We got together with the boys and with those guys, and we went up north, and on Friday night, we played some paintball, which was a lot of fun. And then Saturday, woke up and just had a regular day up at the cabin, shooting some guns, and the boys running out in the woods shooting BB guns, and us just hanging, adults, guys hanging out around the fire. And then at night, right, it came time for this ceremony. And man, I can't tell you just how powerful this thing was. So, it started out with, me opening up a little word of prayer, because faith is very important to me, and to my family, and to my friend and the guys that are there, or that were there. So we did that. And then I explained to my son and his buddy kind of what was going to go on, and not in a lot of detail. I just said, hey, and they knew why they were coming up there. They had kind of an idea, but they didn't know what it was going to look like. So I just explained to them, hey, I invited these guys up here because these guys have contributed to my life in some significant way, and they mean something to me. And I've asked them to share with you some things about what it looks like to be a man. And now, just to backtrack a little bit, right? So for a couple weeks prior to that, I had been trying to have very intentional conversations with my son around manhood, and asking him questions. Hey, how do guys know when they become a man? Like, what does that look like? Do you ever think about that? Like, what do you think about character? What do you think about integrity? Like, what do you have a vision for your life? Like, what do you think you want to be when you grow up? Just things like that. It doesn't have to be super serious, but trying to spark a conversation with them. And those conversations went pretty well. And we'd be intentional, and go out to breakfast, and then try to have these talks. So fast forward back to the ceremony. So these guys that I invited, they went right down the line, and they shared these things, that what manhood meant to them, and what it looks like to be a man in their opinion. And it was just cool to kind of see their faces, as they sat around the fire, and they listened to these things. And there wasn't much reaction, right, at first, because I think they were just kind of they were just taking it in, right, like what was going to happen. And then this is the crazy thing, like, right, how God moves. So once everybody shared what it meant to be a man, I spoke a couple words over my son, and over my son's buddy. And then, I asked everybody to take turns and to pray for each of these young men, as we welcome them into the beginning stages of manhood. And you talk about the floodgates opening. I mean, God was moving, and it was extremely powerful. And there wasn't a dry eye in the place, right? After we got done with that. So once that was done, and everyone took a moment to gather themselves, right? We wanted to cap the ceremony off, right? Put a capstone on it, cement it in place. And in order to do that, you need to have something that's age appropriate, that can be a connector back to that ceremony, so that, and hopefully it's visual, right? So every time they look at it, they're reminded of this thing. So what I did is I went and I bought these boys some swords, right? Because what boy doesn't want a good sword? I mean, what guy doesn't want a good sword? Let's be honest. I got one hanging on my wall right over here. So I went and got them these swords, and I wrapped them. I think I put them in a box or something. Oh, here my thing goes again. And I presented it to each one of them, and it was really cool. So I got my son. You kind of see this picture. I'll bring it up. This was the following day, but I got my son like a medieval like knight sword, because he's like into that. Yeah, Martin Kempenaar, absolutely starting a family tradition, brother. Come on, man. And then I got my buddy's son a samurai sword. And the cool thing about it is, I just asked God, to direct me on which sword to get who and why. And, God gave me a couple of words, and, I was able to tie each of those swords in to, their character and what I saw in each of them, right? And just to call that out of them, right? To cast vision over them, so that, one day they as they get older, they continue to step into that more and more, and to walk into that. So it was a real awesome time. And then that's phase one, right? So I'm in the midst of planning phase two, because my son's going to turn 18 here in June, and what that looks like. And it'll follow the same type of format, right? Like, there will be some discussions and some questions, that we'll probably have over breakfast. And then there will be something, that we'll do fun, probably with a couple guys. And then we're going to have a ceremony. Probably, I don't know if it's going to be up at the cabin or whatever, because I want to include, his mom and some other people in that this time around. But, there will be, words spoken over my son. And now that he's older, there will be a different calling that's placed on his life, right? There will be different vision that's spoken over him, so that he knows not only what's expected, but he knows what to look for in life as he moves forward, and some of the challenges he may face, and how he'll be able to combat those, and to deal with those. And then, of course, there will be, for me, the phase three, before he gets married. And there will definitely be, in both of those phases, something that I give to my son that's meaningful and memorable, that will always make him remember those times. So it's really cool. I really encourage you guys, if you have sons, or if you have a young man in your life that you're pouring into, that you really strongly think about doing something like this, right? Because only men can bestow manhood on another man. It can't come from women. It can't come from culture. It can't come from books. It can't come from TV. It comes from relationship, right? In my opinion, it comes from the relationship that you have with God. And as God pours his love into you, you pour your love into others. And then they will see God in you. And then you can get out of the way and watch as that relationship grows between them and God. Yeah, Charles, man, it's awesome. He will know how to act like a man, for sure. Thank you. So I would just want to encourage you in that. And there was one other thing I was going to say. Shoot. See, that's the problem with the comments. They throw my mind off. But yeah, so that's the manhood ceremony. Get after it. Next week what we're going to do is I'll actually walk you through kind of more of the framework, if you're thinking about this, for the ceremonies, the age-appropriate ceremonies, and just kind of give you guys some different ideas, because while I did this with my son, I was also fortunate enough to be part of a couple of these, and to speak, over some other young men, and watch how these things just, they change their lives, right? They change the course of their lives. And we don't have enough of that as men today, where we're coming alongside the younger generation, right? Those that are younger than us, and we're calling them up, right? We're calling them into their higher calling, right? As husbands, as fathers, as productive members of society. And they don't have to be at that stage yet, but we want to cast that vision over them, and we want to show them and talk to them about what that looks like, and what we believe. So I appreciate you guys tuning in. I appreciate the comments. If you know anybody, armor our young fellows with the king. That's right, Martin. If you know a brother that could use this type of information, please share this video with them, or share it to your page, or comment and say, hey, check this video out. There's some good content. I love you guys. I know I say this, and I don't say this to impress anybody. I just say this to impress upon you. I'm really doing this because I love you guys, and because I care about guys. I care about their lives. It breaks my heart when I see men out there, and they're just struggling, and they're walking through life confused, not knowing what's next. They expected more out of marriage. They expected more out of life, and it's not meeting their expectations. And that could be for a number of reasons. I'm not here to judge anybody because I was in that space in both those areas, in my life and in my marriage. So I've been there, and I know what that's like. And I'm going to do everything I can to help guys out. So I ask you guys to share these posts and stuff, not so I can get accolades, not so I can be internet famous, but so we can help as many men as possible. So I appreciate you guys' time tonight, and I'll see you back on this page tomorrow for Wednesday Wisdom. Have a good night. Get some good rest. Love you. Bye.